Hello and welcome back to Only One Red. And today we are going to be talking about the Tower of Nero, which is the last book in the Trials of Apollo series. As of filming this, I actually haven't filmed anything about the Tyrant's Tomb because I mostly read it when I was at home over Christmas. And I find it kind of more difficult to film videos. Unless I did film a review, I actually cannot remember. Over the last month and a bit, I have been filming a lot of clips, but I've been kind of not been keeping track of them. I think I'm gonna get myself like a book reading kind of journal to kind of make a note of what I'm reading and what I'm updating on. But I do 100% know that I have not made any updates regarding the Tower of Nero. I'm actually like towards the end. I've only got about just shy of 100 pages, around 80 pages. I think I'm going to finish this weekend. It's currently Friday, and I typically read more on the weekends. Yeah, so sorry, slight wardrobe change as well. I just remembered that I hadn't done something that I needed to do, and I went and did that, and I also got cold, and I put a jumper on. But anyway, basically this is my first update because this is the first time since being back in my flat at uni where I have thoughts. And I have a thought, and I can't remember if I've mentioned this before in any of my videos. I don't think so because I've mostly just been talking about I've only had a YouTube account since really reading the Trials of Apollo. I think I also slightly before that when I was on Brooklyn House Magician's Manual, which was basically like the last thing in like the Kane Chronicles universe. That's when I started my YouTube channel. But these are like a lot of like the kind of more problematic things that were in Percy Jackson and Heroes of Olympus are not here. Even though there wasn't anything really problematic, the only thing that I have ever struggled with Rick's writing that reminds me of the fact that he is a man that has always made me a little bit uncomfortable, and that thankfully has gotten less and less frequent. But I found the first hint of it in this book, which I haven't seen in any of the other Trials of Apollo books. He kind of employs this cliche that I really, really hate of villainizing femininity and feminine traits and a feminine appearance. It happened in The Sea of Monsters when Annabeth had her makeover and Percy couldn't recognize her, and he was like, "Oh my god, she's wearing makeup. She has been corrupted." And how Cersei and everyone else in kind of the spa in her island were very beautiful and very leaning into femininity. The way that he always treats the kind of traditional, like the big, like female villains, um, it really reminds me of the way that Disney always gave like these feminist lines to like the villains. Like they made Cruella, for example, very, very she said that line to I've forgotten her name. The main character in 101 Dalmatians, the woman who before she marries her husband, she basically tells her like all men like the like when you marry like that's like the death of a good woman or something similar. And obviously Ursula in The Little Mermaid was also very independent, also styled very femininely with very heavy makeup. And it's kind of this juxtaposition of like it's what we call in English like the Madonna whore complex. You have the whore who is sullied and in control of her sexuality and her femininity, and who uses her power and who uses her beauty and has weaponized it as against men. And then you have the pure maiden who is not like other girls. She is a tomboy, or if she's not a tomboy, then she's very lightly feminine. She's very naively and purely feminine. Um, she's not allowed to kind of wield that femininity as something powerful or something that can be used against men. And his kind of the way that he describes Cersei and Medea has always irked me a little bit because he kind of you know dismisses their very valid points of why they did the things that they did. I'm not saying that they are saints or good people, but it would have been nice to maybe like not just like gloss over that. And the thing that really bothered me, but I kind of like dismissed because I thought, okay, fine, he doesn't really want to talk about rape in a children's book series, was the kind of framing of Medusa as just one of Poseidon's ex-girlfriends instead of someone that he literally raped. However, like I said, I'm going to excuse that because that's difficult to explain in the first Percy Jackson series, which is literally like it's the most juvenile out of the series, so I can forgive him that. And later in the accompanying books, in Percy Jackson and the Greek Gods and Percy Jackson and the Greek Heroes, he does go on to kind of chastise the male gods for their treatment of women. So I'm gonna let that one slide. But he does recurrently slip into this. Like I think he does it like almost unconsciously, of like whenever a female character is like being tempted, she's like getting a makeover. It's very similar to how Piper always rejected femininity and how she felt um out of place as a child of Aphrodite, because she was a tomboy and like she wasn't like all these other girly girls in the Aphrodite cabin who were like just these mean bitches. Um, I'm sure there's other examples as well. I can't remember them off the top of my head, but basically, I'm at the part where Meg has just gone back to Nero, and he's given her like a makeover, and he's trying to like brainwash her to be like under his control. And Apollo sees her for the first time after she's gone back to him. Well, they've both gone back to kind of take him down, but he kind of isolated her from Apollo in order to try and get under her skin and try and manipulate her again. And she's basically been dressed up really nicely in this like ball gown. She's had her hair trimmed. I will say that it's a lot better, and if I had only read this, I probably wouldn't have had any problems with it. It just kind of gave me like a flashback of like earlier earlier books. Um, because in this one, to be fair, it's not so much about the fact that she has been um that she's more feminine. It's the fact that she's more clean and more perfect and lacks her imperfections and what makes her her. Although there is a little bit of an element, of villainizing femininity, I still do think, but it isn't as bad. But I just like I read that and I was like, really, Rick, really? This came out in 2020. Like, stop it. Just stop. Just stop. Okay, girls can wear makeup and be good people. Okay, relax. Just relax. Hello. So I finished the Tower of Nero. Um, yeah, let's talk about it. Honestly, it took me a while to read this. These last two books have been a little bit hazy in my memory just because um I've had having a lot of ups and downs. I was ill twice. I've also been reading like a few other books at the same time. So I haven't been kind of like solely like consuming just these the way I was like earlier with the book series. This one is definitely one of my favorites in this series. I would say this one and The Burning Maze are definitely like up there, and The Hidden Oracle. Um, what do I even say, honestly? Sorry, I'm still going to be sipping coffee. This made me cry. Thank goodness we didn't lose any more main characters because I couldn't take it. This was just. Honestly, I'm not even talking about this book. I just feel like the end of an era now that I've finished The Trials of Apollo. I finished these really quickly comparatively. I can't remember when I started reading them, but was it September? I feel like it was later than that. It was probably more like October time. But regardless, like yeah, I don't even know what to say. Honestly, like I don't even know what to say. No, it wasn't September because in September I was reading Blow of Olympus. I must have started these in like late October, so I read through all five of them in like 2 months. So I'm honestly like incoherent. Like I want to post a review of this, but I can't even find the words. And I can't find things that I haven't already kind of said. Um, Overall, I think that Apollo's like character development is just superb. Um, I just found the way that in the end he goes back to all of his friends to check up on how they're doing and how much he's learnt from his experience as a mortal and how he doesn't feel like he belongs on Olympus anymore. I just find that so beautiful. But I also appreciate the fact that they did in the end make him a god again because they couldn't really keep him as a mortal because that would be messing up the Greek pantheon, like, and it would kind of feel a bit of a repeat of how the first series of how Percy Jackson ended, because Percy Jackson rejected immortality, whereas Apollo embraces immortality, but he kind of vows to do better and to use it for good. Honestly, like, I just feel so empty after reading this now because I'm basically done with the main, like, Camp Half-Blood Chronicles. I'm done with Percy Jackson, I'm done with Heroes of Olympus, and I'm done with Trials of Apollo. I know that there are still things to read in the Ridenverse, but, I'm done with, like, the bulk of it. I'm done with, like, what most people think of when they think of Rick Riordan's books. Not to, like, erase Magnus Chase, because I know that it is going to have, like, references um to the Percy Jackson characters as well, but I also kind of suspect and know that it's not going to be the same. I know I still have technically 3 books yet to read in the Camp Half-Blood Chronicles. I still have The Sun and the Star, and I still have the 2 new books from, like, the Percy Jackson new trilogy, and I also have, which is what I'm going to read next, Camp Jupiter Classified, which is the companion, like, novella. I think it follows, like, a minor character from Camp Jupiter, is what I believe that's about. So we'll see how that goes. So, I'm not completely dejected because I know I still have, like, Rick Riordan-verse books to read, and I know that he's not even done writing them. I know that he's announced the Sun and the Star sequel for this year. So if I read these slowly enough, I might actually end up, like, having the new book to read, like, before I run out of, like, his next books. Although I think I am going to read them quite quickly because I've read, like, around, I don't know, 25 of his books this year. So I read the 5 Percy Jackson books this year. 2024 is what I'm talking about. I read the 5 Percy Jackson books, the 5 Heroes of Olympus books, so that's 10. The 3 King Chronicles books, so that's 13. 4 of the Trials of Apollo books, because I finished this year, so 17. And then a few Percy Jackson and the Greek gods, Percy Jackson and the Greek heroes, so 19. Demigod Files, 20. The Demigod Diaries, 21. Brooklyn House Magician's Manual, 22. The Ken Chronicles Survival Guide, 23. And then Demigods and Magicians, 24. I think that was it for Percy Jackson books. Oh, The Sting of Apollo, 25. That was really short, to be fair. Yeah, so 25. I think that's all of them. I think that's all of the books that I read. I might be missing something somewhere. But anyway, I know that some of those were really short. They were only, like, around 100 pages. But yeah, now what have I got left? I've got the Magnus Chase trilogy, 3 books. The companion books to that, so 9 to the 7. Wait, something to the 9 worlds. I've forgotten what it's called. And then Hotel Valhalla, and then Sun the Star, and the 2 new ones. So 8 books left. Will it bring me up to, like, September time, which is when I expect he's going to release the new book? I don't know, maybe. But even if it does, what's going to happen after I read that book? What am I going to do? I don't know. I just feel like I shouldn't get depressed because like I said, I still have things to read, but it just feels like the end of, like, an era. Even though, like, this is setting up things that do excite me. This seems to, I know he kind of, like, said that wouldn't happen because a lot of people have been asking it for it to happen. A lot of people have basically been asking that he writes, like, a series that's basically like an Avengers style mashup of all of his previous series. And he said that he's not planning on doing that because it's going to be, like, a really difficult endeavor. However, he also, like, I believe, explicitly denied that The Sun and the Star was going to have a sequel. And then after Wrath of the Triple Goddess came out, he made that surprise announcement that he is actually, like, it's written and it's just going to come out. So I think he might just be saying that in order to not, like, get us too excited. and for there not to be much pressure, because there are things that are set up in here that we know followed through. The plot of The Sun and the Star, with Nico and Will planning to set off to Tartarus to rescue Iapetus, that is set up nicely at the end of this. And at the time that this came out, I don't think The Sun and the Star had been like properly announced, because this came out in 2020, I believe. Let's see when The Sun and the Star came out. I think The Sun and the Star came out like 2022, 2023. So I don't think it would have been announced. So I think that this was like a setup for that. And then, wait, The Sun and the Star release date. Yes, so it came out in 2023, 3 years after this book kind of hinted at that book. And this book has also hinted at something else. What this reminds me is literally like the Marvel like credit sequences that kind of hint to like what's coming. There was this scene where Chiron was missing. Well, he wasn't missing, but he was away from Camp Half-Blood, and it was said that he went to this meeting where he talked to a severed head and a cat, because of a common threat. And I have not read Magnus Chase series, but I kind of googled that because I kind of suspected that the severed head in some shape or form is like the mentor in like the Magnus Chase series, and I googled it and I was right. And I think the cat refers to Bast, who is kind of like the mentor / teacher of the House of Magic in the Kane Chronicles. So I feel like they're kind of like the equivalents of each other, and they were having like a meeting to discuss an upcoming common threat. So I think that he's setting up a new series that's going to be a mashup of all his previous series. And honestly, if he does do that, I will be so happy. I will cry if that happens. That will be like a dream come true for me. Yeah. So honestly, I don't even know what to say about this book in particular. I really like the way that it dealt with like themes of domestic. Well, is domestic abuse a correct term? It's more child abuse. It's more like being abused by like a parent, and like the cycles of abuse and how difficult it is to break that cycle. I thought its commentary on that was very intelligent. I don't know if I'm going to make a video on reviewing The Tyrant's Tomb, honestly, because at this point, kind of the plot of all these books has kind of like just like coalesced into one. So honestly, I think I'm just gonna leave it at this review, and this is gonna be like a review for like the rest of the Trials of Apollo, because I finished Tyrant's Tomb again, like I said, when I was at home, and I didn't really have much opportunity to like talk about it. If I'm gonna look through what clips I have. If I did film any clips about it, I'll just like edit it and add it to this video, and this will be like a joint review. The only thing that I can really think about with that book, I did like the fact that Raina joined the Hunters, and I do think that it was really funny. The scene where Raina like burst into laughter when Apollo like flirted with her, and the fact that that kind of burst of laughter was kind of what dug through like years and years and years of her having a really hardened shell. And it was really nice to see like a more like light-hearted, fun, free version of her in this book, laughing with Leo and Talia, because we haven't seen Raina in that way at all. It's kind of, she's always been someone who's built walls around herself, who's suffered a lot in the past, and who believes and believed that she always needed to have this kind of front of strength, in order to not let down the people around her, and also not to let herself down and not to allow herself to crumble. And I think that it was very telling that in Blood of Olympus, like she was basically the first one after Jason to really properly break through Nico's defenses, because she was the only person who could really understand him. And I think that it's really cute how in this book both of them basically have found their family. Talia, Raina with Talia, and Leo and the Hunters, and how Nico has Will and the rest of the Apollo campers. I think the relationship between Apollo and his children and Meg is also really, really sweet. I continued to be a little bit disappointed by the lack of confrontation between Apollo and Caligula, even though he did end up being the one who killed him in the last book. I don't know why I put killed in like brackets. I guess because he's like a minor god, so he wasn't technically killed. He was like destroyed, annihilated. I don't know what word you want to use. But I still kind of wanted like some sort of like closure or like acknowledgement of each other. Like I just felt like it would have been better that way. But then again, I guess that Rick didn't really want to give his villains humanity. He doesn't really tend to give his villains humanity apart from Luke. So I I understand. I appreciate it. Like to be fair, he was like a cold-hearted murderer, so I guess this is a kid's book. You don't want to be introducing like too much nuance, because you don't want kids to like idolize like a psychopathic murderer, which is fair enough. Um, the fact that Apollo was also like in this book willing to completely sacrifice himself, let himself die in order to save humanity and the world and ensure that Python was defeated. I think that that was also very, very good. I don't have anything else to say, honestly. I'm like emotionally drained and exhausted from making this video. So yeah, I hope you liked it, even though my thoughts weren't that coherent. I'm gonna be reading, I think, Camp Jupiter Pacified next as like my main book. And then the only other thing that I'm reading, well, listening to is Intermezzo at the moment. So yeah, as an audiobook, obviously. Yeah, so that's my reading at the moment. See you guys next time.